On February 1st, 1966, Frank Sinatra was commanding the stage at the Sands Hotel when he did something that shocked 18,000 people. He stopped mid-song, walked into the audience, and pulled a crying stranger onto the stage. What she whispered in his ear was so powerful that it made the King of Vegas break down and sob uncontrollably in front of everyone. But what could a complete stranger possibly say to one of the most famous men in the world that would shatter him so completely? The amber glow of spotlights cuts through a haze of Lucky Strike smoke, casting long shadows across the packed Copa room at the Sands Hotel. It's February 1st, 1966, and Las Vegas pulses with the kind of charged energy that only comes when Frank Sinatra takes the stage. The massive crowd has somehow squeezed into a space meant for half that number, their bodies pressed together in uncomfortable intimacy. All eyes fixed on the man, in the perfectly tailored tuxedo, who owns this desert kingdom. Frank adjusts his bow tie with practiced precision, the movement so subtle most wouldn't notice, but it betrays something, a restlessness that doesn't belong to the chairman of the board. His fingers find the microphone with the confidence of a man who's done this 10,000 times before. Yet tonight feels different. The weight of expectation hangs heavy in the recycled air, mingling with expensive perfume and the sharp bite of gin martinis. Ice cubes clink against crystal glasses as wealthy patrons settle into their seats, each one having paid premium prices for the privilege of witnessing greatness in action. The opening notes of "Fly Me to the Moon" spill from the orchestra pit, and Frank's voice follows, smooth as aged whiskey, rich as velvet. The crowd leans forward as one organism, hungry for the magic they have paid handsomely to witness. In the front row, Sammy Davis Jr. raises his glass in silent salute, while Dean Martin lounges with characteristic nonchalance, his trademark cigarette dangling from fingers that have held more drinks than most men see in a lifetime. This is their world, their time, their empire built on charm and swagger, and the kind of cool that can't be taught or bought. The Copa room itself breathes with history and possibility. Red velvet drapes frame the stage like theater curtains, while mirrors reflect the scene into infinity, creating the illusion that this moment extends beyond the boundaries of physical space. Waitresses in tight black uniforms navigate between tables with practiced grace, balancing trays of top-shelf liquor, while avoiding the wandering hands of men who believe money grants them license for anything. The air conditioning struggles against the heat of so many bodies, creating a sultry atmosphere that makes every gesture seem more intimate, every glance more significant. But Frank's eyes aren't on his Rat Pack brothers tonight, nor on the familiar faces of Hollywood royalty scattered throughout the premium tables. They're scanning the sea of faces, searching without knowing what they're looking for. Row after row of admirers blur together. Wealthy businessmen with their immaculately coiffed wives, high-rolling gamblers taking a break from the tables, Hollywood starlets hoping to catch his attention with calculated smiles and strategic décolletage. Something pulls his gaze to the third row, where a young woman sits motionless among the swaying crowd. While everyone else moves to his rhythm, she remains still, her face illuminated by the theatrical glow in a way that makes her seem isolated from the celebration surrounding her. Her hands clutch something against her chest. A photograph, perhaps, though from this distance Frank can't be sure. The contrast between her stillness and the animated crowd around her creates a visual discord that his performer's instincts can't ignore. Behind the polished facade and million-dollar smile, Frank Sinatra carries wounds that no amount of success can heal. February 1966 finds him at the peak of his powers, yet haunted by ghosts that refuse to stay buried. The divorce from Ava Gardner still echoes in empty hotel rooms and sleepless nights, her absence a constant ache that no other woman has managed to fill. 3 marriages, countless affairs, and he still wakes up alone more often than not, surrounded by luxury but starved for authentic connection. The pressures of maintaining his empire weigh heavier with each passing year. The Sands Hotel expects him to pack the venue night after night. Capitol Records demands hit albums, and Hollywood studios compete for his attention with increasingly lucrative offers. Everyone wants a piece of Frank Sinatra, but fewer and fewer people seem interested in Francis Albert from Hoboken, the kid who grew up poor, who learned early that charm and talent could open doors that birth and breeding kept locked. His relationship with certain associates in Las Vegas has grown more complicated as federal attention intensifies. The easy money and mutual favors that built his desert kingdom now come with risks that make even Frank nervous. Phone calls go unanswered, meetings move to more discreet locations, and the casual violence that once seemed like background noise in his world has crept closer to home. The FBI has files with his name on them, and everyone knows it. But it's the changing landscape of American culture that perhaps troubles him most. The Beatles have conquered the country he once ruled, their youth and energy making his sophisticated swagger seem suddenly dated. Rock and roll dominates the airwaves while his kind of music, real music he insists, gets relegated to the past. At 50, Frank Sinatra faces the possibility that his time might be ending, that the world is moving beyond the need for his particular brand of cool. Tonight's performance carries extra significance. Record executives huddle in the back of the room, evaluating whether a live album from the Copa Room might recapture some of his fading commercial magic. Critics who once fawned over his every release now write with subtle condescension about his classic style and timeless appeal. Code words for irrelevant, he knows. The young woman in the third row continues to draw his attention, her stillness becoming more pronounced as the crowd around her grows more animated. As he transitions into "The Way You Look Tonight," Frank notices how her grief seems to intensify with the romantic lyrics. Whatever photograph she clutches appears to be the source of her pain, and something about her anguish resonates with his own hidden sorrows. He's spent decades perfecting the art of emotional performance, channeling personal pain into public entertainment. But this woman's raw honesty strips away all pretense. Her grief isn't for show, isn't designed to manipulate or impress. It's simply the visible expression of a heart breaking in real time. The realization hits him with unexpected force. He hasn't felt anything that honest in years. And in that recognition of shared pain, something shifts inside him. The moment arrives without warning, cutting through the performance like lightning through velvet darkness. Frank's voice catches mid-phrase on "The Way You Look Tonight," not from any technical failure, but from something far more profound, the sudden, inexplicable need to reach this woman whose pain has become unbearable to ignore. The orchestra continues, Nelson Riddle's arrangements flowing seamlessly forward, but Frank steps away from his mark at center stage, microphone still clutched in his white-knuckled grip. A murmur ripples through the renowned nightclub as the packed audience realizes their king is deviating from the sacred script. Sammy and Dean exchange glances from their front row table, confusion flickering across faces that have seen Frank improvise countless times, but never like this. The spotlight operator scrambles to follow him as he descends the 3 steps that separate performer from audience, his patent leather shoes clicking against the polished floor with each determined stride. The young woman looks up as his shadow falls across her table, her tear-streaked face reflecting the amber illumination like fractured glass. She can't be more than 25, with the kind of wholesome beauty that belongs in suburban kitchens rather than Vegas nightclubs. Her dress is simple, inexpensive, not the designer gowns that typically populate the front rows of his shows. The photograph in her hands becomes clearer now, a young man in military uniform, his smile frozen in black and white clarity. Frank extends his hand without speaking, the gesture cutting through protocol and expectation with surgical precision. The entire room holds its breath, thousands of hearts beating in suspended animation as this most private of public men makes himself vulnerable in ways that would terrify lesser performers. The woman stares at his outstretched palm as if it might disappear, her fingers trembling as she slowly releases her grip on the photograph and places her hand in his. Her touch is magnetic, not with passion, but with shared understanding of loss that needs no explanation. Frank helps her to her feet with the same gentleness he once reserved for his own daughters, guiding her through the maze of tables toward the stage, while the crowd parts like water before them. She moves as if in a dream, her steps uncertain but trusting, allowing this iconic stranger to lead her into a spotlight that could burn or illuminate depending on his intentions. As they reach the stage, she leans close to his ear, her lips barely moving as she whispers 7 words that no microphone could capture, no recording could preserve. The message is meant for him alone, carried on breath that smells of tears and desperation, and the kind of grief that transforms everything it touches. Frank's body goes rigid as the words penetrate his consciousness, his famous composure cracking like ice under sudden pressure. The transformation is immediate and devastating. The smooth crooner facade that has weathered decades of scrutiny and scandal crumbles in an instant, revealing the raw humanity beneath layers of carefully constructed celebrity. Frank Sinatra, the master entertainer, Vegas royalty, the man who never shows weakness, breaks down openly before thousands of witnesses, his tears falling like rain on the polished stage floor while the orchestra plays on, unsure whether to stop or continue this unprecedented moment of vulnerability. The room falls into a silence so complete it seems to swallow sound itself. Frank steps back from the young woman, his hand releasing the microphone as if it has suddenly become too heavy to hold. The gesture sends feedback squealing through the sound system before dying into nothingness, leaving only the sound of his ragged breathing and the distant hum of air conditioning that no one had noticed until now. With shaking fingers, he reaches up and loosens his bow tie, the small silk rectangle falling to the stage like a white flag of surrender. "Stop," he says quietly to the orchestra, his voice carrying despite its softness. Nelson Riddle raises his baton, and 42 musicians fall silent in flawless unison, their instruments lowering as they recognize something sacred is happening before them. Frank removes his tuxedo jacket and drapes it gently around the young woman's shoulders, the gesture transforming her from intruder into honored guest in a single moment of unexpected tenderness. When he finally speaks to the crowd, it's not with the polished confidence of Frank Sinatra the entertainer, but with the broken honesty of Francis Albert from Hoboken. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice thick with emotion he's never allowed them to hear before. "This young lady just told me something that puts everything else in perspective." He pauses, gathering strength from somewhere deep inside, the same place that once helped a skinny Italian kid from New Jersey believe he could conquer the world. "She showed me a picture of her fiancé Tommy," Frank continues, holding up the photograph for the crowd to see. 22 years old, killed in Vietnam 2 weeks ago defending a country that barely knows his name. The silence in the room deepens if such a thing is possible, as the stunned crowd confronts a reality that their evening of entertainment was supposed to help them forget. His last request was that she come to Vegas and tell Frank Sinatra that he died listening to My Way. The words hang in the air like incense, sacred and heavy with meaning that transcends entertainment. Frank walks to center stage, his movement slower now, weighted with purpose rather than performance. "Tommy never got to live his way," he says, his voice gaining strength from the truth he's speaking. "He never got to fall in love, raise kids, grow old, or make his own mistakes. He gave all that up so we could be here tonight, safe and free, and worried about nothing more serious than whether the martinis are cold enough. What follows isn't a performance, but a communion." Frank dedicates the rest of the evening to Tommy and every other young man whose name will never appear in lights, whose dreams died in rice paddies and jungle clearings half a world away from the glittering stages of Las Vegas. When he sings My Way 30 minutes later, his voice carries the weight of every choice Tommy never got to make, every path he never got to walk. The lyrics transform from autobiography to eulogy, from celebration to memorial. As the final notes fade into the Nevada night, Frank stands with his arm around Tommy's fiancée. Both of them change forever by a moment that started with entertainment and ended with truth. The standing ovation that follows lasts 12 minutes. But it's not for Frank Sinatra the performer. It's for the man who had the courage to let his heart break in public, who chose humanity over showmanship when it mattered most. Long after the last audience member files out into the desert darkness, people will remember February 1st, 1966, as the night the King of Vegas became simply and powerfully human.